This time, Big Ron's Man United nearly men.
'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the seemingly impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, making the case for Oxford United wherever possible. And joining me as ever, a man more across the numbers than Tony Bloom, it's our very own Jamie Rooney.
Wow, yeah. Not so much numbers this week, Graham. I'm going to spell this on you straight away. Because obviously we can both agree on this is the team we're going to talk about where we can certainly say that winning cups was more important than winning league trophies. And you're going to agree with that completely because of the period of time. And I have a feeling, because I know you like to make your little references to Oxford United, and I think you're going to be well prepared. So this week, what I've done, I've got a little buzzword bingo card. I've got 16 buzzwords that I think may crop up in reference to your beloved Oxford United, in reference to my beloved Manchester United.
Yes, it is and it's an exciting one, this one. So this is for those who missed last week, this is our 101st episode. Alistair Cook-like, we're taking a fresh guard, we're booking in for bed and breakfast and getting ready for the next, make it a big double. I mean, out of all the many Man United glorious sides, we choose Ron Atkinson's Man United.
I think when we both decided that we wanted to revisit Manchester United, and I've been wanting to do that for a while, and you've been very carefully managing me at arm's length, we kind of both agreed that Ron Atkinson would be the right place to go to.
And joining us this week on in very much my room 101, I think, if nothing else, Man United fan Richard Evans. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Graham. Nice to be with you again.
So last time round when you were on here, which was unbelievably, at least more than a couple of years ago, we did the undisputed greats, I guess, the Ferguson's treble winners, who were quite impressive. But there's definitely there's a bit more room for manoeuvre on this side, I suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So August 23 it was. We did the 99 team, which was straightforward, one of the greatest, all-time greats, I think. I think we'd all agree with that. And I've listened since, and I've still not come across a team that I think suppresses that side. But I think today's more of a challenge to me. I was 18 to 23 in this period. So this is when I started going to away games and really getting into the team. So some really, really fond memories of this period. And probably my favourite ever player was in this era, which I'm sure we'll come to in due course.
Well, I already know that this team has Jamie's favourite ever player, but I doubt it's the same one.
Yeah, I think I'm more aligned for where Rick is, but yeah, I had a soft spot for Jesper Olsen. I can't deny it.
Absolutely.
So I guess for the thing with this side, God bless the current version of Man United, because they're doing their best to help contextualise where Man United were when Ron Atkinson was there, which is some way from the glorious period they had been enjoying. I guess there's some real context here, because I sort of remember this around the weight of expectation on Man United managers was huge, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And you know, I think after the Busby era, we had Franco Farrell, TD, Tommy Docherty, Dave Sexton. Dull in terms of Dave Sexton, I must confess. And Atkinson came with that flamboyant sort of aura around him. Don't forget, he's from Liverpool, so he was a Scouser, bizarrely. So he came with a lot to do and brought a real flamboyant to the team. And I think it was the good times for a period of time, without a shadow of a doubt. And we were never successful in the league, but we had some great cup days, some fantastic cup days. Bizarrely, many of our best days seem to be in the white kit, which I absolutely adored.
I mean, Ron Atkinson he really is chalk and cheese to Dave Sexton. And my sort of memories of Dave Sexton are mostly based on Football Panini sticker albums rather than actually watching what he did. But he was a very quiet, sort of, and that whole Man United side seemed to be quiet and almost studious, but not kind of. It seemed to lack a certain flair and certainly flamboyance is the word, isn't it?
He just produced dull football, I think it was fair to say. And as you say, I think they were fairly uninteresting players in the time. And then we got to the Atkinson era and it was just a different way of playing and a different way of winning games. And there was lots of ups and downs during the 5 seasons he was around. So it was a very interesting period, I think.
I mean, I have to say, when I was a bit sort of surprised when I went to re-look at this, because I obviously think of Ron Atkinson and Oxford, but he never actually managed us, but we saw him at, he's probably very closely associated with that West Brom side. But actually he's managed more games for Man United than anyone else. And his win ratio is better for Man United than anyone else. This is his best period too.
His sweet spot. Absolutely. Yeah, I think he had about 50% win ratio, which again, when you compare to recent managers we've had, and we've had 12 managers since Ron Atkinson. Incredibly, you wouldn't for 1 second think it was anywhere near that number, but that includes the variety of temporary managers, including Carrick and Giggs and Rude, of course. But 12 managers since Atkinson left, which is unbelievable. And obviously, amongst all that was Ferguson, who had a huge reign that took up the majority of the time from Atkinson to the current managers. But when I look back, it was really good times in terms of some of those fantastic games, and mainly in the cup, apart from one particularly fantastic start in a particular season that I'm sure we'll talk about. But no, I look back fondly in that era. At the end, it fizzled out, but it was good times in between, and some great visits to Wembley, some fantastic visits to Villa Park, and absolute travesty when they took the semi-finals away and they went to Wembley, because Villa Park was some of the best memories I can ever remember as being a United fan.
Yeah, it was a happy hunting ground. I think that the fizz of the champagne definitely flattened by the time Atkinson was out the door. But I don't remember Sexton at all, Rick. My earliest memory, I think, is the 79 Cup final. It's a blur memory on the phone to my granddad, who was an Arsenal fan, phoning him on the dial phone as United have gone to 2-2. And literally, as I'm gloating as a 7-year-old boy, Arsenal have put one in the net, and I've promptly put the phone down, crying my eyes out. That's my earliest memory of United. And I'm a United fan, as we've discussed before, because of my dad, and I kind of adopted it from there. But I don't remember Dave Sexton at all. I remember him as a coach retrospectively now, but this era now, Atkinson, this is how I remember being a fledgling Manchester United fan, the excitement of the cup runs. And Graham, I thought it was a bit yo-yo-y up and down the league form. And I think we've kind of all alluded to that. But when I look back, if you compare Atkinson's 5-4 seasons, his average position is 3.6, so between third and fourth. In Ferguson's first 5-4 seasons, his average position is 7th. So in theory, the 5 years that Atkinson has league-wise is more successful than Ferguson's first 5 years, which is something you would never really recognise or even think when you look back on the history of Manchester United.
So Ron Atkinson, he's made his name at West Brom. He's created this massively entertaining, kind of free-flowing team. It doesn't actually win anything at West Brom, but wins a lot of friends. Definitely wins a lot of friends, and it's still remembered hugely fondly. Rick, what's the quality of the United squad that he inherits? Was it underachieving under Sexton, or did it need revamping?
I think it was in need of a refresh, to be honest. And I think, we mentioned it already, but it needs that more flamboyant players in the team. And I'm mentioning it now, but he brought in Bryan Robson, who is my hero as far as I'm concerned. And we talk about great players and the memory fades with time. Robson was the player that, if he was in the team, I thought will win the game, without a shadow of a doubt. If he wasn't in the team, I always thought, there's a chance we'll get beat today. Whenever he played, I was confident we would win. And it's amazing, during the Atkinson period, the times when we didn't quite hit the heights and we didn't win, he didn't play. Or he was injured, or he was substituted during the game. But the number of times he delivered was incredible. He was just. They talk about one-man teams. When I think of one-man teams, he's the guy that I think of in terms of who could deliver. He was great in the air. He was fast, ferocious tackler, absolutely box-to-box player, fantastic captain, could get stuck in when it needed to be. He was everything that, in today's game, in the modern game, I struggle to think of a player who I can compare him to because he was a one-man team. And Oliver Holt did the 100 best players of all time. And Robson wasn't in the 100 best players, which I just thought was criminal, absolutely criminal. So De Bruyne was in, Scholes was in, even Whiteside was in. But Robson not appearing in the top 100 players of all time just made me sad. It really did.
I think it is interesting because last week we were talking about Nottingham Forest and we were talking about Trevor Francis and the first £1 million player. And this is, we're at a point where the transfer record is getting broken, probably a couple of times a season as things are gradually inflating. The pressure on those players to deliver when the record has been broken is immense. And, I don't think it was Trevor Francis's fault because Clough played him as a right winger most of the time. But there's a lot of those players. I remember these players who get signed for a lot of money who don't actually live up to it. So I think Steve Daly was one who struggled for City. There's lots of players you can think who didn't come. Now, the pressure when they signed Bryan Robson from West Brom for, I think it's 1.5 million or something, isn't it?
He was, yeah.
Britain, the Britain's most expensive player. I think he's probably still got the perm at that stage, has he? I'm not sure if he's still got the perm.
Correct. He's signed on a table on the middle of the pitch.
Signed on the table. I don't know why I remember that, but I do remember it.
Yeah. And West Brom made him a deal-breaking offer to keep him, which was £1,000 a week. So their deal-breaking offer of £1,000 a week was rejected by Robbo, and you're quite right. He came with at the time the record price tag, £1.5 million. I just love everything about him. His New Balance boots, the fact his shirt was always untucked at the front and not at the back, and it was just a hell of a player. And of course, he's still an ambassador of the club now.
Yeah, and I think a really decent guy as well. I think he's just really well liked globally. Rick, that shirt, the way he wore his shirt. I mean, when I started playing football, he absolutely was my hero. I would play football with my shirt with the back tin like Robson and that kind of kangaroo pouch at the front where the shirt was hanging out. That's exactly out because I was desperate to be just like Bryan Robson, a box-to-box midfielder. Absolutely inspirational. But Atkinson, absolutely charismatic, charming individual. He was under the spotlight when he had basically used up £1.5 million as a British record transfer at that particular moment to buy Robson. But he was unequivocal. He was saying, this guy is worth every penny. He's an absolute bargain. And when you talked about the box-to-box, Rick, in the press conference when he signed it, he talks about Bryan Robson coming in and he said he could play in a defensive midfield role. He could even play in defence, but he's going to play in midfield and he's going to drive the games. He's going to control and drive the games. And that's exactly what he did. Atkinson laid out at the very beginning what this player was going to do. And he absolutely hit the ground running. And he was worshipped from day one, really, wasn't he?
I mean, what a shame he had so many injuries and that I think impacted his England career as well as his United career. But again, don't forget, he came with Moses as well. And Moses was absolutely under the radar player and did all the dirty work for Robson. So Robson could do the marauding runs forward. What a great player he was as well.
Robson wasn't Atkinson's first signing, I don't think, though. Was it Frank Stapleton he brings in for just under £1 million?
Who also produced some fantastic moments. What I like about Stapleton is there was the League Cup semi-final at Arsenal where we won 4-2. And he scored against his old team. Absolutely celebrated as if it was the best goal he's ever scored. None of this nonsense holding your hands down and I apologise for scoring. He wanted that goal and he's delivered that goal and celebrated as you should do. So one of my pet hates in football when you go back to your old club and you say, oh, I'm really sad I've scored this goal. But Stapleton absolutely celebrated like you should do.
It's weird, isn't it? You wouldn't necessarily think that that Stapleton would be the one to do it, because he was he always appeared sort of quite steady, quite understated in amongst that side. I mean, he was a massively consistent player throughout his career, but I think, I don't know if I'm making this up, but he always sounded, he was pretty softly spoken. It was all kind of, you just wouldn't, if there's anyone giving it the full...
Like Mark Hughes, very softly spoken off the pitch, but an absolute monster on the pitch and would walk through brick walls for you. So another very interesting character in terms of how he performed on the pitch against off the pitch. And of course, Stapleton scored that third goal against Barcelona in that fantastic night at Old Trafford, which again is in this period where Maradona played for Barcelona in that hideous yellow kit. And United won 3-0 with, again, Robson, one of his finest moments, sort of Keane-esque against Juventus in 99 sort of performance on the night. And lot of arguments about this, probably the best atmosphere I've seen at Old Trafford. And when all those old shots, when you look at the crowd, when it's standing only, it's just a mass of humanity, which, is something you just don't get, obviously, for good reasons anymore. But it was just a fantastic evening, fantastic experience.
Yeah, so that Barcelona game was the quarterfinals of the Cup Winners' Cup in 1984.
Yeah.
They'd lost 2-0 in the first game at the Camp Nou. And it wasn't just Maradona, you got Bernd Schuster in there as well. And it is just one of those incredible games. I wasn't blessed to be there, Rick, as you were, but I remember listening to it on the radio, and it was an absolute it was just such a ride. It was such an emotional ride because you could feel the heat of Old Trafford through the radio. Such was the occasion. And Stapleton's celebration, by the way, in that game is fantastic. He kind of he does the Mick Shannon with both arms. He wins
that's right.
with both arms. It's really wonderful. And it's a simple goal that he kind of half volleys in at the near post. And it's it's wonderful. But going back to Bryan Robson, and I know we jumped ahead here a bit, he was under speculation to be sold at that particular moment. So United were flirting with flogging him off to Juventus for something like about 3 or 4 million.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which does seem extraordinary, really.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you're right. He scored 2 goals in that game. And interesting, the game afterwards, the Juventus semi-final, he was injured for that game. There'll be an ongoing theme here about Robson being injured or not playing and us not having a successful outcome. So, it was a semi-final heartbreak in terms of game beat by Juventus. But the game at Old Trafford against Barcelona was one of those top games of all time.
So that in that first season, which and United performed pretty creditably. I think they finished third at the end of that season there, and he's also manages to get a tune out of Gary Birtles. I mean, we talked about Gary Birtles last week in Nottingham Forest. Now he's earned his transfer to Man United, and I don't think the first season's gone terribly well for him because he wasn't scoring at all. But Atkinson gets him going.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say he was never prolific at Man United. There was a long period when he didn't score at Old Trafford, and I remember when he eventually did score. Like literally, the roof nearly came off the ground because everyone was so pleased for him and so delighted that he scored. He was more a Sexton player, Gary Birtles, and an Atkinson flair player. I thought steady player. He did do better under Atkinson, but I don't think he ever got to the heights he was at Forest.
Well, Atkinson sold him in the summer.
Exactly.
He got him playing and then sold him on.
The other player one of the other players who was already there and who certainly hits the ground running is Ray Wilkins, isn't it? Who becomes a really integral part of this team.
I actually love Ray Wilkins because he was just a steady player. And who can forget his curling left foot shot against Brighton in the FA Cup replay, which is an absolute screamer of a goal. And actually, it's quite interesting because he sort of won over the United fans in this period. He wasn't that popular and felt, a bit unloved in the early days. But when he was eventually sold to AC Milan for interesting $1.5 million, I think he was the player of the season that year. So I think United fans were really disappointed he left to AC Milan eventually, but he just kept the ball ticking over. And again, he allowed Robson to maraud forward in those runs that he made.
Yeah, I remember Wilkins fondly. I loved him as a football player. I think because he just played with such grace and poise. He's one of those players that just seemed to just make time slow down on the football pitch. He had that talent, and he played all 42 league games in Atkinson's first full season. So he was super important. And I think he did. Rick, you've already mentioned it. I think he allowed Robson to make those runs consistently into the opponent's penalty box because Wilkins was steady enough to cover the spaces and then smart enough just to distribute the ball in all the right places to get the team ticket. And another player they had in that first Atkinson's full season, another player I absolutely loved was Steve Coppell.
Yes, funnily enough, another scouser, but we won't hold that against him. And a phenomenal winger. And actually, I think it's quite a rare player in today's game. The wingers are much more tucking in and cutting in. So Coppell was hugged the right-hand touchline, ping the ball in. You know, you see the clips of United and goal after goal came from a Coppell cross from the right wing, and it would be literally right at the touchline. So, no, a great player and just a real team player, no drama, just got on with the game and was, I think, really well regarded by his teammates and obviously a bright guy, got a degree, and I think you could see the way he played him as an intelligent footballer.
When you think about Man United's side of this era, you are thinking about midfielders, you are thinking about forwards. You're not often thinking about the defence. And, you know, when I look back, it feels like the defence throughout this time is that always the weakness?
I think it's a fair point. I'd probably throw in one exception, who was Paul McGrath. Again, I get a bit boring here. Another of my favourite players. I love Paul McGrath. Interestingly, I was at his debut and he played against Bradford City, I think, on his debut. And I went to that game and it was a midweek game. I think it was a League Cup, third round, something like that. And this guy turned up and he was just calm, cool, and just a superb player. So I think it's probably a fair challenge in terms of defence at the time. But I think the exception is McGrath, and you know, he put 163 games for United. Interestingly, United were going to pay him off as, you know, his injuries took over. And then he went to Villa and did 253 games at Villa. So he played more games for Villa when United were about to pension him off than he did for United. But a classy player, Paul McGrath. He really was. And of course, he had a fantastic career with Villa and Ireland.
I think you always know there's that sort of level of quality because I remember when he broke through, there was always this idea that he could play in midfield as well. And I think he does play quite a few games in midfield. And he has that ability in the same way as Robson could play centre-half and played a few games centre-half, certainly for West Brom, I think. Rath obviously had that ability to play higher up the pitch if required. And that suggests, as we know, he was extremely comfortable on the ball.
Yeah, really classy player. And you read about his history in terms of his childhood, and it's pretty horrific, really, in terms of the background he came through. And for actually to be signed for United from St Patrick in Ireland and then achieve the career he did is a fantastic achievement. So I think hats off to him in terms of his ability on the pitch. We might come back to his ability off the pitch in the bars, but in terms of actually delivering on the pitch, and I think, you know, from all accounts, at Villa, he hardly trained, just did a bit of work on the bike and then would turn up on the Wednesday, turn up on the Saturday, and invariably be the man of the match. Phenomenal player.
Yeah, his breakthrough season was 82-83 when he came through. And it's quite a transitional moment, though, because you've got another player who's come to the end of his Man United career, and that's Martin Buchan, who's been there for some time, played under a number of managers, a bit of a hero at United. So Buchan's just on the way out as McGrath is on the way in.
Yeah, but Buchan was a class player. And I always like the story that when the team went on Euro away trips and they would collect all the passports, he wouldn't give his passport up because he said, I'm not a child. I can look after my passport. Whereas the rest of the team obviously handed their passports into the organizer. And he wouldn't do that. That just basically summed up the man. Class player, class person.
So that first season it's quite an interesting one. I mean, Atkinson doesn't win any of his first 4 games; he loses 2 of them. But United are there or thereabouts throughout the season. I think they're top at various stages, and they end the season really strongly. I think it's 7 wins out of 9, which kind of sets them up going into that 82-83 season, which is kind of the first defining season for United, because you see a few things happening. Firstly, they start that season like house on fire, which is a bit of a trait under Ron Atkinson, and they get their first kind of silverware. Now, I think, again, there's probably the most notable addition maybe then is that Arnold Muren, who has obviously done all sorts of things for Ipswich as well.
Yeah, and if you look at the clips of the games at that time, he seemed to take every free kick, every corner. He was involved in every set play, and he had a fantastic delivery. And again, one of those really calm, understated players, the steady eddies of the team, but he seemed to be involved in all the key moments in terms of that season in particular when he started. And I think we also saw the emergence of a certain Norman Whiteside as well at this time. Each 17, another of my favourite players. Even Oliver Holt has got him the 100th best player of all time, which is an interesting stat, which I may have mentioned earlier. Just at 17, he was just an animal. But great touch. Lovely 2-footed player, great balance. Was as quick as me, which is not very quick. But apart from that, he had everything in the armoury.
And I think maybe Ron Atkinson was a good manager to bring him through. Maybe he was the right man to bring him through in terms of having that confidence. I mean, there's a huge amount of. I mean, obviously the comparisons with George Best are massive. Not necessarily on playing style or anything like that, but just in terms of age. Obviously, both being Northern Irish and Man United players at the time. And so there's a real weight of expectation on Whiteside's shoulders, but he absolutely carries it off, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. It just didn't seem to bother him. And actually, he was one of those players where the bigger the stage, the more he performed. Youngest player to make his debut for United since Duncan Edwards. I think it was a couple of weeks before his 17th birthday. A phenomenal prospect. Again, somebody who was blighted with injuries, both at United and then lastly with Everton, and retired incredibly early. He just was such a machine, just in between that midfield and forwards. Had a fantastic touch, great turn, and could score important goals, notably in the FA Cup semi-final at Villa Park that we mentioned earlier, which is one of those, another of those fantastic occasions as a United fan.
And also, he's just come back from the 1982 World Cup playing for Northern Ireland as a 17-year-old. It just plays into the whole narrative during this period in 1982-83, where I think there is a genuine belief and maybe even like a mild concern from Liverpool that maybe this Manchester United team can challenge for a league title. They've got this youngster who's being compared to George Best. They've got the best central midfielder in English football at that particular moment. They've just taken Muren from Ipswich, who are an absolute brilliant team during this period. And the defence is looking a bit more solid with Paul McGrath. So I think there is, Rick, you tell me, it feels to me, I was delusional enough as a year-old at this moment in time to think Manchester United was going to win the league championship. Was I alone in this delusion, or was it shared somewhere else in the country?
No, I think I couldn't tell you the number of years I started the season where I think Man United are going to win the league. To be fair, that's not happened in recent years. But I would agree with you. I think at the start of the 82-83 season, absolutely, we were revved up and were really, really going to challenge Liverpool. Liverpool at this time were probably their best ever side, weren't they? And you run through their list of names, and they had a phenomenal side. And they had that aggression from the likes of Souness and the class of Dalglish. They were a very, very strong team. But we had the Indian sign over them, I think, during this period. And sometimes you think, oh, you can beat them in a one-off game. Fantastic. And we can beat them over 42 games. It's a different kettle of fish, though, isn't it? And I think we just came short again. I think we finished third in this year. Great cup success, but it just, as you say, Jamie, started off lot of hype, not as hype as we'll come to shortly, but started off with a lot of hype and then just fizzled out, which is sad, really. But the cup games in this year were just some of the best ever. They really were. I mean, we absolutely took Arsenal apart in both the League Cup and the FA Cup in the semi-finals, which some of the best games I've been to.
Yeah, we'll come on to that cup run in a second. The other thing I think's quite interesting, obviously you have and United have this unbelievable reputation for bringing genuine stars through the ranks and bits and pieces, which they've consistently managed to do. And during this era, obviously we have Whiteside and we have Hughes. Is there sort of any kind of regret that Peter Beardsley is on the books at this stage? And what a difference if he could have come to the party at that stage.
Absolutely. And I think it's sad that we just couldn't get the best out of him and just find a slot for him, because he became an incredible player. I think it was probably because we had players ahead of him that at the time were just better players and with a bit more patience and giving him more chances. I think he could have been a United great, but unfortunately he went somewhere else that I can't quite remember to be a great for another team.
I think there was some question mark over the money that Vancouver Whitecaps wanted from him. I think because he came from Vancouver, didn't he? He was quite pricey for a youngster. I think it was close to $500,000. I think and one thing we should really mention, which is really important at this moment, is that Atkinson signed a lot of well-known footballers, but he's also brought in a pretty decent youth coach in Eric Harrison in 1991. And I think they've identified through Harrison's early work a youngster in the ranks that they feel is a better option than Beardsley, and that's Mark Hughes. So Mark doesn't feature in the 82-83 season, but he's there in the background. And I think it may have been down to a straight choice between keeping Beardsley or Hughes, and they put their money on Hughes. And it wasn't a bad bet. As great as Beardsley became with Liverpool, Mark Hughes had a fairly decent career at Manchester United.
Probably it sort of reflects how different the game is then and now, isn't it? Because now you just you go off on 3-year seasons of different loan spells, and then by the time you sell Hughes, you don't have to sign Terry Gibson. So, everything would be...
It's strange, isn't it? Because you're right, you think that, was there such a thing as loans in those days? I can't remember any player that seemed to go on a loan. I think it's a modern phenomenon, isn't it?
It's a totally different model, isn't it? Because as say, and I'm only looking at Beardsley through hindsight. You just it just suddenly occurred to me, oh my God, you had Whiteside, Hughes, and if you'd had Beardsley as well, that'd be sensational. But there isn't really room in the squad for more than 4 strikers. It's totally different now. I mean, the league, as you say, under Ron Atkinson, actually, United are pretty solid and consistent. They're always in the top 4 or thereabouts. But it is the cups that lift them, and in fact, and this season they've runs in both League Cup and FA Cup. But the FA Cup is the one that stands out, doesn't it?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the semi-final at Villa Park, fantastic game, and the place was absolutely buzzing for that semi. And of course, Arsenal went 1-0 up, and then we had to claw back from Robbo, I think, scored the first, and then Whiteside with that phenomenal left foot volley. I don't know if you remember, but Kevin Moran split his head open and he was on a stretcher, and he's giving a thumbs up to the fans behind the goal as he's sort of stretching off the pitch. So it's just incidents like that. And I was fortunate enough to be at that game, and it was just one of those fantastic occasions. So, and then, of course, you roll into Wembley.
I mean, this is the spell where we can remember every FA Cup final in ridiculous levels of details. I don't have to do any research on the 1983 Cup final, at least the first game between Brighton and United. But in this one, United do go in as kind of firm favourites. There's a good media story with Brighton. I think this is the one, Jimmy Melia, doesn't he arrive in a helicopter and all sorts of bits and pieces like that? And Jimmy Melia was a bit of a character in one way or another. But the game itself is really open, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Brighton really should have scored at the death, didn't they? And Smith must score. And you look back on it and you think, my God, he should have absolutely buried it, but it got stuck under Bailey, didn't it? And then obviously we then went to the replay, and the days when there was a replay, the good old days. So, you know, a great event. And I remember going and really disappointed that we didn't win, but then relieved at the end when they just could have absolutely snatched it. And we'll still be talking about that today because they were relegated that year, weren't they, Brian?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the times, Graham, when you say you do know all about it because you literally watch them on TV from having breakfast in the hotel. The coach journey, the whole day was taken up with watching the FA Cup final. But no, it was like I say, it was a relief, Dave. I think from me as a United fan travelling back, and then you're already looking forward to the replay midweek, going back to Wembley, and that was a completely different story, wasn't it?
Yeah. A comfortable 4-0. Brighton don't really turn up. It's sort of obvious, isn't it, that they did have their chance and they missed their chance, and United win that replay comfortably. One of the players I'm curious how he's remembered with you guys, really, and I think quite fondly based on something Jamie said in last week's podcast, which I edited out of it. We can happily talk about it again, which is Gary Bailey, because United were linked with Shilton and didn't think either thought it was too much money for it or whatever. And Gary Bailey is the keeper during this period. How is he kind of remembered in United, amongst United circles?
I would say overall fondly. I think he was prone to mistakes, but he seemed to be a great shot stopper. And obviously with his blonde hair, very noticeable, not only in the goal, but also in the city as well. And again, a smart guy, intelligent guy. I think he went on to be a pundit, did he not, in South Africa? So another player that had, a bit like McGrath, knee injuries. And I think if those players were playing now, I think they would have certainly resolved the knee problems that they all seem to have. But I think he was, I wouldn't say there's any bad vibe about Gary Bailey at all. I think he's remembered fondly by the majority of United fans.
And Gary Bailey finishes his career playing for Kaiser Chiefs. So along with Lucas Radibi, he is the other Kaiser Chiefs specialty.
I think the replay, that, as you say, if you were not a United fan, a bit of an anticlimax. Two things that I recall is, one is Steve Foster played in the replay, but of course he didn't play in the first game. He was injured, wasn't he? And United fans rather crudely had a song, Stevie Foster, What a Difference You Have Made, they sung at the replay, which I felt was funny, but a bit harsh. The other interesting point, Robbo got 2 goals, and we had a penalty, and he gave it to Muren, which was the first penalty Muren had ever scored, either for Ipswich or United.
Wow.
And if Robbo had taken it and scored, he'd been the first player to score a hat-trick in an FA Cup final for 8 years. And he passed it on, and another sign of the man, in my opinion.
Yeah, this just embodies who he was. He was just an incredibly humble, decent guy, brilliant at football, absolutely Captain Marvel for every ounce.
One player who doesn't make the final, it's quite sudden, is Steve Coppell, who gets, I mean, this is his career-ending injury, I think he gets, but he had an incredible run of appearances, didn't he, Jamie?
I think he made 207 consecutive league appearances for Manchester United, which I think is a record. And it was only really cut short when he got the injury, his knee injury. I mean, and that would have been under, I think, 3 different managers. That would have been,
I think that's correct.
Sexton, Atkinson, and Doherty, I think.
Yeah, Doherty, Sexton, Atkinson. Yep, correct. Which is interesting. That's one more than Whiteside made in his whole career with United. So consecutive appearances with one more than Whiteside made in his career, which he was just so consistent and I think a very underrated player as well in terms of his contribution to the United team in this period.
Yeah, super reliable, I think, Steve Coppell. So Ron Atkinson has ended Man United's wait for a trophy. I think it's 6 years since their last bit of silverware. The league remains elusive.
Surprised he didn't get sacked. That seems to be the common denominator in recent years. Win the FA Cup final and get fired.
Well, he doesn't get fired, and in the second half, we'll discover how he goes in the next 2-3 seasons of his United career. So welcome back. We are looking at Ron Atkinson's Manchester United. So we get to the 83-84 season. And again, this is all about, I think this is all about the cups for slightly different reasons. So they begin quite well with the Charity Shield, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. 2-0 victory, both scored by Robbo, I seem to recall. So we start on a real high, FA Cup winners, and start the Charity Shield as 2-0 winners over our bitter rivals, who I can't remember the name of the club. And then we start very, very positively. 83-84. That seems to be the theme in many of the Atkinson years, sort of over time, sort of start to fade a little. But again, some mixed highlights in terms of the cups, I think, during this year, is fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get on to Europe, because I think Europe's quite a good story here. I mean, in any normal season, going out to minor league Oxford over 3 glorious games in the most glorious of fashion would be the headline, and we did go into quite a lot of detail on this when we did that Oxford side with Scott. But actually, there's a second cup disaster, isn't there? Which is an even bigger shock, isn't there? Because United end up drawing United FA Cup holders. And again, I think this is probably the evil twin sister, or the mirror image of how everyone used to be in and watch the FA Cup final. Third round day was obviously a big thing. And I mean, obviously you didn't get to watch the games, but you did get to watch unless you were at the game, you did get to watch grandstand and the scores coming in. And Man United drawn at Dean Court to play Bournemouth, lowly Bournemouth, and unbelievably Bournemouth caused the upset, don't they?
I think this sort of defines the Atkinson period. We had the ability on a one-off game to go high and beat anybody on our day, aka Barcelona, Liverpool, etc. But on another day, we could be beaten by literally anybody. Lowly Bournemouth, and even Oxford of all teams beat us. So I think that was the definition of an Atkinson era, really.
Just to bring some context to the Bournemouth result, it is a Bournemouth in the third tier, the third division, as it was called back then. The game took place on the 7th of January, 1984. On the 2nd of January, just 5 days previously, United had gone to Anfield, the league leaders, and United was second in the table. They went to play Liverpool, the league leaders, and they drew 1-1. So in the space of 5 days, and I think this is what we're saying, this typifies the era, that typifies Atkinson's United. They've gone from taking a point at their closest rivals, the league leaders, the best team in the country, to lose to a third-tier team in the FA Cup.
We will be Bournemouth fans, don't worry. We are unbelievably going to be doing an episode on this and some other stuff. But we are going to be covering this team managed by Harry Redknapp, and there's lots of strands we're going to be following up on this. The European run, though, is quite something. So United are in the Cup Winners' Cup, I think it is. It's a bit of they sort of scraped through against Dukla Prague, I think, managed to get through on away goals, but everything sort of kicks off in round 3, doesn't it? Because you have these two games. You have the quarterfinal against Barcelona and the semi-final against Juventus, and these are special games, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as Jamie said earlier, we beat 2-0 at the Nou Camp. There were 58,500 fans shoehorned into Old Trafford. Absolutely phenomenal performance by the team, led by Robson, who scored 2 goals. And as we said earlier, the Stapleton goal at the end. The scenes at the end with Robson being carried off the pitch are iconic in terms of the United history book. And I think it was just a phenomenal performance. And when you look back, Maradona did very little in that game. They absolutely marked him out the game. And as Jamie said earlier, they had some fantastic players. Schuster was playing. Maradona was probably at his peak, I would suggest, at that time. And yet he didn't really get a kick. Maybe one shot easily saved during the game. So I think it was a fantastic performance. And the complete opposite of that Bournemouth performance with largely the same team. So how can a team deliver such a woeful performance against Bournemouth and then such a fantastic performance against Barcelona. Incredible. And then you went on to the semi-final against Juventus. Important note, Robson didn't play. I mean, there's a theme here. And we unfortunately lost 2-1 after 1-1 draw at Old Trafford. And I think Alan Davis scored in the home leg. So unfortunately, he had a very sad early end to his career and also to his life, actually. And he died at the age of 30. So it was, you look back, and such a waste in terms of a great player who had a short career at United, but obviously contributed.
And another player who's emerging this year is, and Jamie, you've sort of already mentioned him, is Mark Hughes. Mark Hughes gets his first chance under Ron Atkinson this season, and again, he's a player who goes on to make such a contribution to United over these next 2-3 seasons.
Yeah, he only played 7 games in this season, but in those 7 games, he scores 4 goals, which is 2 more than Garth Crooks scored, who played 6 games in that season.
I have no memory of Garth Crooks being at United. I don't know how this had passed me by.
I don't remember United either. I don't think I've ever seen him in a United shirt. And Rick, you probably have, but I can't remember. I just remember Garth Crooks as Tottenham, and
I can't remember him either.
But the emergence of Mark Hughes is going to be significant for Norman Whiteside, because this kind of necessitates a change in Whiteside's position, doesn't it? Which actually seems to go even better.
He replaces Wilkins, doesn't he, Rick? I think Wilkins is sold off. You already mentioned it.
Yeah.
To AC Milan. And then Whiteside is moved from a forward, playing essentially as part of a 2 up front with Frank Stapleton, into midfield to wear the number 4 shirt and to fill the void that Ray Wilkins has been doing for so long, and which is giving Bryan Robson license to go and break his shoulder every 3 months.
I think when you reflect, I think Whiteside's best position was probably in midfield, because I think that lack of pace he had, I think, didn't look out of place when he was in midfield. And as I say, he had a lovely touch, and he was a strong, aggressive player, good in the air. And I think some of his best times were, I think, in midfield for United, even though he did score some fantastic goals. Hughes was a crowd favourite. Everyone was really disappointed when he was eventually sold, and delighted when he came back after his Barcelona and Bayern Munich break. And I think we were all delighted when he came back. But at this time, he was an emerging player and very, very powerful. Great technique, great 2-footed player. Again, good in the air, phenomenal volleyer with the ball, and very, very aggressive as a centre forward.
I'd probably say the best volleyer of any of our generation of football. I'm not sure I've seen anyone else volley the ball quite as well as Mark Hughes. Seem to actively seek the ball on the volley. There are 2 other important players come in that 84 season at the start of it. Both wide players, I guess, but very different. So we've got Gordon Strachan and we've got Jesper Olsen, Jamie's favourite. And in my mind, this is the Ron Atkinson team I kind of remember. When I think about the Man United side, this is much closer to the midfield that I kind of remember of this, with Strachan and Olsen probably on playing wide, and a combination of Robson when fit and Norman Whiteside in the middle. And again, it's another year which is sort of defined by cup success, isn't it?
Liverpool are no longer the best team in English football. Everton have briefly replaced them and just absolutely blitzed the league. I mean, no one gets anywhere near them this season. So I don't think it matters how great United started in the league and how poorly they finished, which seems to be the theme under Atkinson. They did go on an incredibly good cup run in the FA Cup, where they meet Everton. And I think Everton, Rick, are probably nailed on favourites for this, aren't they? They're going to win their first double, only the 3rd time in English football history, or the 4th time in English football history that a team's won the double. And United aren't given much of a chance to beat this Everton team in the FA Cup final.
No, absolutely not. And it was a long, drawn-out cup final. Went to extra time, of course. Famous for Kevin Moran being the first player to be sent off in the FA Cup final, which probably a harsh decision. Would VAR have upheld that? Probably not. And then a phenomenal goal from not so young at the moment, Norman Whiteside, cutting in from the right and curling a a left footer that we all know and love past Neville Southall. So it was very much against the run of play, because I think this was a purple patch for Everton in this particular year. And I think they also beat us in the Charity Shield at the start of the next year. So they were definitely one of Everton's greats, but great performance, resilient performance from United. Managed to get through with a 1-0 victory in the FA Cup. Another cup success.
And it's a great game. And you're absolutely right. I suppose this is the weird thing. This Everton side were so good. And because you might find this difficult to believe that quite often I didn't have skin in the game for the FA Cup final itself. Oxford sometimes hadn't made it all the way through. But I would just always support the underdog, whoever it was. That would just have to be it. So amazingly, I was backing United in this one. And it is that Whiteside, in the same way as you've seen Wilkins bend one in at Wembley 2 years before, and then Whiteside's winner is just a thing of beauty, isn't it?
It's a stunning goal. I nearly killed myself that day as well, because I'm watching it in the living room of my parents' house, and we lived on this council estate, and we had these French windows that you'd pull back, and obviously it's May, so generally could be warm, it could be cold. And we had the windows open at one point, the French windows open at one point, and then we shut them. And my dad used to love having the curtains drawn on FA Cup final day. He used to like the idea of just the darkness, and you've just got the light of the television that you start watching at 8:30. So when Whiteside scored this incredible goal and curled it in, and it's a beautiful goal, I'm euphoric. I'm just running away thinking the French window door's open. I'm taking the curtains out. I'm just running into the garden because I'm in an absolute moment of euphoria, and I've gone bang right into the French windows and bounced back. I mean, how I didn't break them is unbelievable. But yeah, it was. So I was brought down to earth with a bump immediately after Whiteside scored that goal.
Yeah, so it was quite something. Hughes is the dominant player in that team, scoring 16 goals. I see Gordon Strachan gets 15 goals.
Before we go on to Strachan's goal scoring streak, Rick, Hughes' pass to Whiteside. I mean, Whiteside's goal is incredible.
Outside
but the pass from it's just sublime. It's just a thing of beauty. It really is. It's just so well calculated. It just looks aesthetically incredible. Hughes powers through. It's quite low, and it just arches out to Whiteside, who then arches inside and curls that beauty. Sorry, Graham, being very rude.
Before we move on, and Paul McGrath, what a performance he put in that FA Cup final. He was absolutely immense in that game. Immense. Sorry, Graham.
Yeah. No. And it's a man of the match performance from McGrath in that final. But yeah, going through the numbers, it is extraordinary to see Gordon Strachan, second top scorer that season, with 15 goals. I mean, again, I must have wiped this from my memory. I have no memory of Strachan being a goal scorer.
No, well, it's a fair shout because you don't really see him. It's much more a creator rather than a goal scorer. But he absolutely had a purple patch in that season in terms of goal scoring.
He also, that season, he played 56 games, which was more than any other player across all competitions. Gary Bailey played in 55 of the 57 games. So Strachan missed one league appearance, but played every other game. So he was super central to Atkinson's team.
There's the other signing Ron Atkinson makes is quite a big money one in Alan Brazil. And this is one in there seems to be a long line during this period of big money strikers who don't really come off. And it is interesting that the best of the strikers that United have over this period, apart from Frank Stapleton, is the homegrown Mark Hughes or Norman Whiteside.
Yeah, absolutely. Never really fired. Bit like you talked earlier about the Terry Gibson was another one who was signed in and never really did it much for United. Alan Brazil, prolific at Ipswich and also at Spurs, I think, before he came to United, but never really turned it on for United. And I think he's actually said, has he not, that the pressure got to him. I think he might have scored something like 8 goals in his appearances at United, which is anything but prolific. So never really did it for us. Never really did it.
I think that comes back to this point, and this is one of the things that that is impressive about Ron Atkinson, I think, is you come back to the pressure attached to playing for Manchester United at this period because of this millstone around the neck about having not won the title for 18, how many years it is at this point. And it's the same with the strikers. A lot of the signings come in with there's so much at stake in terms of the pressure of playing for Man United and trying to change everything there, which I don't think existed at many other clubs around that time. You know, it
probably still doesn't, or rather still does exist at United. I mean, even in recent times, you think of players like Anthony, where you just thought the shirt was just too much for him, and he goes away and really performs well in Spain, and yet he was absolutely dreadful at United. And I think the shirt is a heavy shirt to wear, and you need to be super confident, Cantona-esque in terms of just embrace it and say, yeah, I want this, and this is where I belong, and this is where I'm meant to be. But many players, I think, really struggle with the shirt. I think Bertel's probably another example that it just didn't work for him.
So United have won a second piece of silverware. Well, a 3 if you count the Charity Shield as well. They're continuing
Don't
this
forget
strong.
The Charity Shield.
And they are, and again, it's another top 4 finish in the league. But I mean, again, I think that says a lot about the pressure that is on United to go and win the league. I think there was a bit of speculation over the summer as to whether Atkinson would continue. I think Terry Venables was linked potentially.
Laurie
But Ron
McMenemy
Atkinson,
as well, I think, at one point.
The beginning, yeah. So Laurie McMenemy was the favourite for the job before Atkinson took it, incredibly. I mean, they're just so contrasting. I mean, you'd have gone from Sexton to Sexton, really, wouldn't you? I mean,
I'm assuming this is before Laurie McMenely's hugely successful spell at Sunderland, before
That's
Phil
true.
writes in. But actually, I think you get to this 85-86 season, and this is actually when Ron Atkinson comes into his own, I think, and that he is absolutely the right man for United and for football at this time, because it is a really grim period of time for English football. Obviously, we've had the Heysel tragedy. The English teams aren't in Europe, so they're banned from Europe. The football hooliganism issue is there. Gates are, nobody's in the ground, and nobody's watching on TV either.
that's true.
So Man United begin this season and go through, the greatest start, which you're going to go into, and nobody gets to watch it.
10 straight wins.
Well, I did.
Well, yeah, I was going to say. So Rick, you were there. This was you.
10
you were
straight
in
wins.
your,
10 straight wins. Phenomenal football. I just want to say our goal difference was plus 24 after 10 games. So, by contrast, we're plus 1 at the moment this season after 9 games. Slightly different times, I accept. So 27 scored, conceded 3 goals in 10 games. And then we how we did it, I don't know. But we then drew 1-1 with Luton. Our 16th game was Sheffield Wednesday. And it's only one of 2 occasions in my life I've been to a game away, Sheffield Wednesday away, without a ticket. And I went to the game thinking I'll get in. It was carnage. You could not get a ticket. I circled the ground, Hillsborough, twice to get a ticket and failed miserably. So I had to drive home listening to the game on the radio. We got beat 1-0, which was our first defeat of the season. Robson subbed in the 46th minute with an injury, which was then for the story for pretty much for the rest of the season. I think he played 27 games in the whole of that season against 46 the previous season. And from that point onwards, we just fell apart in terms of the rest of the season. But they were heady days, those 10 wins. And, the hype that was around United was incredible. Yeah,
I think the 10 wins is an incredible run where it looks like everything is coming together. And it does look, like I say, I think this United team, the way they played, the way Ron Atkinson set up, which was all about enjoyment and entertainment, wasn't it? That, he understood. He was a big, he's a big character. Entertainment is at the heart of everything, and United played in his image. And this is the moment it's all clicks. They're going at almost 3 goals a game. I mean, 10 straight wins is incredible. I mean, they're only 1 short of the I think it's the Spurs double winning side have the record at 11 straight wins, so they're only one short of that. No one has matched it since. Even after that draw, they kind of hold it together. They win 3, draw 1. So as you say, after 15 games, they're top and they're at 10 points clear, something like that. And as well, you look at Liverpool, who obviously are the major rivals, or one of the major rivals at this point. They're obviously kind of restructuring and in a down period after Heysel. Everton have a slightly funny start, and United have got that win over Everton in the cup final the season before. So everything seems to be set up for this to work, and just for that opening period, everything seems to be flowing.
Absolutely, and it seems such a short period of time from the start of the 85 season when they were playing champagne. Interesting choice of word for Big Ron, but champagne football to November 86 when he was sacked. It's an incredibly short period of time where it can change from a real high to a desperate low, and they were desperate in those latter days. But I think we started really well. I think Mark Hughes's move or planned move to Barcelona really didn't help us that time. He went off the boil and he was playing so well for us, and I don't think that helped us at all. So there were reasons why we declined. I think the main one was Robson. Robson pretty much had his peak then. The first 10 games he was on fire, and then started to get the injury, and after that he just didn't play nearly enough games for us in terms of the rest of the season. And I've said it before, he was just so influential.
When I look at Robson's record at United, this is the only season he doesn't play 30 games or more. So, there's this whole period, or at least over the first 10 years or so of his career there. And this is the season which I think, but it's interesting when you go through the games played that season. Actually, there seem to be, I think it must be injuries across the board, because there are only two players who played 40 games. Incredibly, one of them is Paul McGrath.
In the second half of the season, you lose Robin Strachan's out of the team primarily for the second half of the season. Rick's already mentioned. I mean, Hughes plays a lot of games, but he already knows he's off in the summer. It's also, it's strange how history can play tricks on the mind, but I remember this period where there seemed to be a real wrestling match between England and Manchester United for Bryan Robson. The club versus country debate was really ripe because Robson was so important to England and their prospects of winning the 1986 World Cup. I think Robson was taking risks playing for England, and also because United had started so well and he was crucial to the momentum, he was taking risks at Manchester United as well. And I think the shoulder just didn't withstand the pressure of the games that he had to play. And I think it's a real shame for England and Manchester United, because if they found a way to balance Bryan Robson through this period, I think we could be looking at two different histories in terms of how those seasons went for both of those football teams.
In all my time of watching United, I can't ever recall one player being so influential as Robson was in this period. Probably the closest to it is Keane in like the late 90s, early 90s, but Robson was so important to the team, and not only for the fans, but also for his teammates as well. And he just trailed off completely during that period. And as Jamie said, there was a real club versus country debate. And I think we United were the losers in that debate.
But and it is, when I look at the squad as a whole there, like I say, only 2 players play 40 games, but only 2 play more than 30 games. So it's only Arthur Albiston and Frank Stapleton play more than 30. So it's pretty much everywhere across the board in one form or another that they're struggling to get the side out. Now, the wheels come off pretty dramatically, don't they, after that incredible start, because they're still top at Christmas. They've got, they've had such a stop, and they gradually, I think when I look through the games, bearing in mind they go on a 10-game winning spell, they then can't win more than 2 in a row from that moment on. They just can't seem to get any consistency.
I think there were a number of reasons, and the swapping and changing the team absolutely didn't didn't help, but I think that they just completely lost confidence. Again, I largely feel that was down to the absence of Robson, and so the team really started playing poorly, which was incredible because they'd done so well at the start of the season. This swashbuckling style of play, a number of games, 3-4, 4-0, 4-1, and then at the latter end of the season, just tailed off completely. And Liverpool just turned it on in the latter part of the season and I think won comfortably in the end.
Yeah, Liverpool were never really that far away. They had an exceptional season this season as well. They weren't losing many games, even for their incredibly high standards. So, I mean, coupled with the fact that they're up for the challenge, that Bryan Robson's got injured and misses pretty much the second half of the season, I think is primarily the reason why United don't go on and win that league championship that Atkinson was so desperate for. But I think there's other things going on in the club. There's always been the rumours and myths. Ricky may be able to give more detail on this in terms of that. Atkinson was not big on discipline. He'd love to join in the five sides and still see himself as a player. I think there was a lot of socialising going on in the team as well. And Ferguson definitely, when he came in, definitely looked at the fact that the team was drinking too much and felt he needed to curtail that a little bit. So maybe that was contributing. I don't know. I like to think it's as simple as the fact that you lose your best player, you reduce your chances of winning the league championship. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a drinking culture, but I think there were in many clubs at that time. And, Arsenal, I think, another classic team until Wenger turned up and turned it round. I think Liverpool, by their own admission, they had a lot of big drinkers as well. I think it was more the time rather than a problem for United. So I don't really buy the fact that it caused, a massive disadvantage to United compared to others. I think it was prevalent across the whole league probably at that time.
It is worth saying it is a proper strong top four, that one, I have to say. United finished fourth on 76 points, and I think they've won titles with that before. And they have a goal difference of plus 34. West Ham, which is the Frank McAvenny West Ham, they have 34 plus goal difference. Everton 45, Liverpool 52. And then Sheffield Wednesday finished fifth with a plus 9 goal difference, which suggests the top four might have been quite some distance ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, Man United, despite that fantastic start to the season, don't finally break their hoodoo again. And the 1986 season will permanently be remembered as the year Oxford United finished 18th.
I'd forgotten that.
I was desperately hoping we got some points off you actually, but I think you beat us home and away. Is it?
I did look up again to remind myself of the Oxford versus United record. Played 16, we won 9, drew 3, lost 4. So we have lost 4 games out of those 16s. There have been some high spots in the 16 games.
I think pretty much all of them have come in the League Cup for us. So this does sort of spell the end. They do. United stick with Ron Atkinson, don't they? But it feels like this was the moment, and and I guess they stick with him because, to your points that you both made, United have been winning cups. They're permanently in the top four. They are there or thereabouts. This is all about the expectations being so high at United, isn't it?
Absolutely. And as you alluded to it earlier, it's constantly when they're going to win the league, And that pressure just built and built and built and built. And that was the holy grail for United during this period. And I think Edwards came to the conclusion that it just wasn't going to work under Atkinson. And there were, as we discussed, lots of high points, but the consistency was just lacking in this team. And the ability to, with one exception of 10 games, the ability to string results together was just not there. And I think that last season was his last chance, really, to deliver something. And, from Christmas onwards, they just fell apart, really. And there was a genius waiting in the wings.
Yeah, history looks kindly on the decision to replace him, doesn't it?
I think it does, absolutely. Not in the early days, but eventually, yes, he came good.
No, definitely not. So we should get to ranking this side. Jamie, I'll let you go first on this. As a reminder, we've got 5 categories of greatness, all-time greats at the top, true greats, touch of greatness, our middle category, edge of greatness, and blink of greats. That could be coming into play. Jamie, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to be balanced, but I'm going to fail. And I'm going to try to make the argument for a touch of greatness, even though I think there's a clear case for edge of greatness. But I do think it's a touch of greatness. So Atkinson's lifted the spirit of the club. He's come in the early 1980s, and, Rick's going to remember this better than I can. After a horrible, flat 1970s decade, post Sir Matt Busby, and all of the success that he brought, there's relegation to the second tier. But Atkinson's brought a new belief to the club. He's walked away with 2 FA Cups when the FA Cup was the most important trophy to win in the 1980s. And going right back to the top of this, you come back in a minute. He's delivered a top 4 finish for 5 seasons in a row. I mean, there aren't even teams that do that nowadays. And other than Liverpool, he was Manchester United, the only team finishing consistently in the top 4 during this period. So that is sustaining something of a high standard. I think Atkinson's biggest problem was probably himself and his charisma and his ego. But I do think he's changed the DNA of Manchester United, and he's taken to a new level. So I think there is a real case for this being a moment of time where it's a touch of greatness and not an edge of greatness.
Rick, what do you reckon? You were there watching a lot of these games in person. Were they fun? Were they fun to watch? Were they as entertaining as they seemed?
Fun wasn't the word I would describe it when you're literally fearing for your life going to some of these matches. And I think that the 2 FA Cup semi-finals against Liverpool, one at Goodison and one at Main Road, which we actually didn't mention the Main Road game. Another of those fantastic evenings, were incredible games. But you came out of those grounds, a little fearful for your life. They were nasty times in terms of that. So I think on the pitch, there were definitely fun times. To me, touch of greatness defines this period because there were touches of absolute ecstasy and absolute peak performance. We had all-time great players, and there is one that we've mentioned a couple of times in terms of Bryan Robson. He is an elite player. And as I said, a one-man team. And I think it was an inconsistent period in terms of the league, although, as Jamie said, we were never out of 4th position. And in recent years, we would have swapped that for anything. But there were just moments of greatness, with other periods of, flamboyant, entertaining football, but not the results on the pitch that we're really looking for. So to me, touch of greatness, I think, is the correct categorization. It's unlike the 99 team that actually delivered in the trophy room where it really mattered. But I think great period, and as I said, very much fun on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's difficult. Where do you rank a team who failed to win the big one, the Milk Cup? Yeah, I have to say, bizarrely, you get no complaints from me. I think touch of great says. I just think Ron Atkinson is what football needed at this time. I mean, he as you say, Jamie, he's a larger than life character. Maybe sometimes it's too much of a sideshow that goes with it to actually knuckle down and win titles and bits and pieces. But I thought he was brilliant for football. He was daring, breaking the transfer record, bringing Robson in, and the way he set the team up, I think it was just fun. And they did have those moments of greatness where they do win. He does bring United back as a top team, if not a top team. So I think we say Big Ron's Manchester United, touch of great. There we go. What a team. Enjoyed that.
Do you know, Ron Atkinson almost won the league with West Brom. He almost won it with Manchester United, and he almost won it with Aston Villa. I mean, you could probably say that's failure, but feels quite successful. 3 teams, and he's challenged for the league championship, but just fell at the last hurdle on all 3 times.
And, West Brom, United, Villa, entertaining football. That was his byword,
absolutely.
wasn't it? He always played entertaining football.
He did.
I think one of the problems is it's really, you can sort of identify it that Bryan Robson was going to be both the key to winning and the weakness, isn't it? That is your Achilles heel. I don't think it's about the one bit of his body he didn't injure, but I think it's very difficult with a player like Robson who was so big a character on the pitch, and the way Robson played, you couldn't really build a team not around him, because you couldn't have the other 10 players and then so Robson's injured, so we'll find someone who can, Clayton Blackmore can fill his space. Nobody can really do what Robson can do.
No, you're right. It is difficult because you have to build a team around him, and then when he doesn't perform, you go, okay, well, we built a team around this guy. What are we going to do this week when he's not playing, and the following week, and the week after that? And it is a shame because absolute phenomenal player, but just blighted with injuries, particularly in that last year, where I'm convinced if it had remained fit, we would have won it.
Yeah, it was quite nice. It was quite cathartic, really. I know he was at the tail end of his career when he picked up 2 Premier League winners' medals. I mean, those early triumphs at United. I know he had kind of become a shadow of himself, and he wasn't playing he'd given up his number 7 shirt to Cantona as well. Such was the change of his role in the team. But it was nice to see him, finally get what I think he really deserved, which was a league championship winner's medal.
He also is. I mean, he's a player who's known for being injured, but I think that's as much his importance to the teams he played for, how much of a linchpin he was, that's what you remember him for. I mean, he plays 345 games for United. He plays 568 or something in his career. I mean, he plays a lot of matches. It's not actually, I mean, as you say, you reference how many games Norman Whiteside plays, and Robson gets through a lot of game time. The other thing is he scores a lot of goals, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
For a midfielder, he's pretty much a goal every 4 or 5 games, which is pretty impressive, isn't it?
And impressive goals as well, big goals. The Liverpool FA Cup final at Main Road, when he does that 1-2 in midfield and shoot and then bursts forward, then blasts it in. Very similar to the Charity Shield goal, again, where he did that 1-2 in midfield and then went forward and scored. So he scored impressive goals as well as big goals. The semi-final against Arsenal, the first goal was Robson coming in from the left. So big player. But I think part of his problem was he was so brave. We haven't mentioned that word, but he was so brave. And I saw when he busted his shoulder at Old Trafford, I remember he came in at the far post, and he was just careering in the far post to get the ball, went literally down the pitch and over to the side of the pitch and busted his shoulder. And that was the first time, or maybe the second time it happened. And you think, there's not many players would have done that and shown that amount of bravery. And I think that was part of his issue. He was too brave, if he can be too brave, and caused a lot of injuries that way.
Yeah, I mean, his injuries is a real sliding doors moment, because if you put him into the international circuit, and this is probably why he doesn't get picked in the top 100 of it.
Even I'm staggered, but even I'm angry at that.
It's outrageous.
It does feel that way. But, in 86, he's with England, who they have a good tournament, and he gets injured in the group stage, shoulder again, and they lose him. And Fit Robson, through that tournament, I think changes the shape of that team. I think he's just as crucial to England as he is to Manchester United. And I think if he's in that team all the way and they play that quarterfinal with Argentina, it's a different game. And then in 1990, he gets injured again playing for England. And that opens the door for David Platt, which is great. But again, a Fit Robson, I think, could have maybe rewritten history. And we skipped over the semi-final, the 85 semi-final that Rick was at, the one at Goodison, which finished 2-2, and the one at Main Road where Robson scores this incredible goal. Just going back to the guy's generosity. So in the first game at Goodison, Robson scores, but when he shoots and the ball goes in, it deflects off Mark Hughes. Now afterwards, the TV studio shows the replay, and Bryan Robson, who's credited with the goal, gives it to Mark Hughes. And Mark Hughes is completely oblivious. It's just come off Mark Hughes' heel and deflected in. He's got no idea Mark Hughes has got no idea where the ball is. It's just hit him as it's going into the goal. But Robson, again, he's giving up goals to his teammates. He's just an incredible, incredible footballer, an incredible man. And as Vic said at the beginning, an ambassador for Manchester United still to this day, and a fantastic one.
Yeah, well,
Agreed.
I'm glad we've been able to set the record right about Bryan Robson. So, although I think the other way of viewing his England career and the sliding doors moment is that getting rid of Wilkins and Robson in the same game and getting Reed and Hoddle might have been an upgrade. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Bryan Robson may have caught Diego Maradona where Peter Reed was just watching his heels.
Correct. Absolutely.
That's one for another time. We are, I think, going to do dip into the 86 World Cup before too long. Excellent. Rick, thanks so much for joining us again. It's been, I've really enjoyed this one.
No problem, Graham. I've enjoyed it. Been good fun.
And Jamie, thank you as ever.
Thanks,
yes,
Jamie.
Thank you. And it's been great to get you back on to talk about proper football teams, which we don't do as often as we should.
And next week, I think we might be continuing the theme to some extent. So the man who takes over the baton from Ron Atkinson, Sir Alex Ferguson, we are going back to not quite where it began, but where he really made his name, as we are going to be revisiting the incredible Aberdeen story next time.